I woke up from emergency surgery to find a legal notice taped to my front door. Karen Winters, our HOA president, had transferred my house to herself for $1. While I was unconscious in the ICU, she tried to steal my entire life. If this story already has you hooked, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and listen all the way to the end, because the ending is pure poetic justice. He never imagined he'd be forced to defend his home, not from burglars or scammers, but from a woman who lived 3 houses down. Her name was Karen Winters, the self-appointed queen of Willow Creek Estates, and she ran the homeowners association like it was her personal kingdom. 6 months earlier, he had moved into the neighborhood with quiet excitement. An architect by trade, he'd spent years designing homes for others while saving every spare dollar to finally buy one of his own. The house he chose was modest but beautiful, tucked at the end of a cul-de-sac lined with blooming trees and carefully edged lawns. It was everything he dreamed of, until Karen introduced herself. She showed up before the moving truck had even pulled away, holding a clipboard thick with documents and a smile that looked more like a smirk. "Welcome to Willow Creek," she said, voice sugary sweet but hollow. "I'm Karen Winters, president of the HOA. I trust you'll read the bylaws immediately." Without waiting for a response, she handed him a binder so thick it looked like it belonged in a courtroom. Then her gaze drifted to his new mailbox. "That's 2 inches taller than regulation. You'll need to fix it within 7 days or face a fine." He smiled politely, nodded, and promised to review the rules. That seemed to disappoint her. Later, his neighbor Tom clued him in. "She thrives on control," Tom said, leaning on a rake. "Been HOA president for 5 years. No one runs against her because no one wants the drama." So, he kept a low profile. He trimmed his lawn weekly, hid his trash bins, and even swapped out his mailbox. But trouble found him anyway, right around the time he planted a small vegetable garden in his backyard. It wasn't visible from the street. He'd made sure of that. A tasteful wooden fence enclosed the plot, which he filled with tomatoes, peppers, and herbs. It was a peaceful project, something to ground him between architectural deadlines. But Karen saw it differently. One Saturday morning, she showed up at his doorstep, cheeks flushed with indignation. "You're in violation of Section 12, Paragraph 4, she snapped. "All vegetable gardens must be approved by the Landscaping Committee, which I chair." He retrieved the binder she'd given him and calmly pointed to the clause stating that gardens were permitted as long as they weren't visible from the street. "There's no mention of needing approval." Her eyes narrowed. "Then the bylaws must be outdated. Remove it by Monday, or face a daily fine." He refused. That's when the harassment began. Fines for grass a 1/4 inch too tall. Warnings about his hose being a distracting color. Even his garbage can placement earned him threats of penalties. At HOA meetings, he challenged every citation. With the bylaws on his side, the board repeatedly overturned her claims. Each time, Karen's fury grew. After one meeting, she cornered him in the parking lot. "You think you're clever," she hissed. "Nobody makes me look stupid in front of the board. You'll regret ever moving here." He shrugged it off, thinking she was just angry she'd lost control. That was his mistake. 2 weeks later, he woke in agony at 3 a.m. His appendix had ruptured. Emergency surgery led to complications, sepsis, high fevers, weeks of hospitalization. He barely remembered those first days, drifting in and out of consciousness in the ICU. Meanwhile, back in Willow Creek, Karen Winters was making her move. While he lay unconscious in a sterile hospital room, fighting for his life, Karen Winters was staging the boldest move of her HOA career. According to his neighbor Tom, she'd been seen entering and leaving his property several times during those 3 weeks, claiming she was checking on the house at his request and watering the plants. Nobody thought to question her. After all, she was the president of the homeowners association. She had keys to everything, or so she made it seem. The truth was far darker. He returned home after 23 days in the hospital, thin, weak, and moving slowly. His abdomen ached with every step, and his breath came shallow. But nothing could have prepared him for the sight waiting at his front door. Taped to the wood was an official-looking notice stamped with the HOA logo. Notice of abandonment and property transfer. He blinked, thinking it must be a mistake. But the document was clear. According to HOA bylaws, his home had been declared abandoned. The property, it claimed, had legally transferred to the association, and new ownership had already been filed with the county. He was given 72 hours to vacate. His hands trembled as he dialed the county clerk's office. Yes, the woman on the other end said after checking the database. A deed transfer was filed 2 weeks ago. It states the property was sold to Karen Winters for $1. $1, he echoed, stunned. That's impossible. I've been in the hospital. I never signed anything. The clerk sighed sympathetically, but said there was nothing they could do unless he filed a legal challenge. The paperwork had been notarized. There was a signature. As far as the county was concerned, the deal was done. That's when he called Jennifer, his cousin and a real estate attorney. She arrived within the hour, flipped through the documents, and looked up at him with fire in her eyes. "This is fraud," she said. "And not even subtle. She forged a legal deed while you were hospitalized. We need to move fast. Emergency injunction, criminal charges, everything." While Jennifer began drafting the legal paperwork, he started collecting evidence. The hospital provided a full record of his stay, timestamps, surgical reports, even security footage of him being wheeled into intensive care. It was undeniable. He couldn't have signed anything. He also installed cameras around the house, just in time. The very next morning, Karen showed up again. This time, she wasn't alone. 2 men stood behind her, holding moving boxes. She was dressed like a realtor on open house day, smiling like she'd just closed a deal. "These gentlemen will assist with your relocation," she said brightly. "Out of the kindness of my heart, I've extended your move-out deadline to 5 p.m. today." He stepped forward, his hand gripping the doorframe for support. "You forged a deed while I was unconscious in a hospital bed. That's a felony," he said. "My attorney has already filed for an emergency injunction. We're pursuing criminal charges." Her smile faltered. "That's ridiculous. You signed the papers. I have a notarized copy." "I was in the ICU with sepsis," he said, holding up his hospital records. "And now, I have you on camera attempting to evict me based on a fraudulent deed." The 2 men exchanged uncomfortable glances. One of them mumbled, "We were told this was a legal eviction. We don't want trouble." They turned and walked away. Karen stood frozen for a beat, then her eyes darkened. "You think you're smart," she snapped. "But I have influence in this town. People owe me favors. You're going to regret this." But this time, he didn't flinch. Not anymore. The emergency injunction was granted that same afternoon. A judge reviewed the preliminary evidence, hospital records, security footage, and the so-called deed transfer, and immediately froze any eviction proceedings. For now, the house was legally his again. But it wasn't over. Jennifer wasted no time. That night, she submitted a formal criminal complaint to the district attorney's office. It outlined a clear pattern of fraud, forgery, and attempted property theft. The notarized deed had glaring inconsistencies: no timestamp, no official log in the notary's journal, and a signature that didn't match his. Jennifer also subpoenaed the notary whose seal appeared on the document. The notary, when interviewed, looked confused. "I've never met that man," he said flatly. "And I don't remember notarizing anything for Karen Winters, either." That was the break they needed. A handwriting expert compared the signature on the deed with his actual signature from bank documents and medical forms. The analysis came back quickly, not a match. In fact, it appeared the handwriting had been traced, sloppy, hesitant, inconsistent. Classic forgery. But the most damning blow came when police executed a search warrant on Karen's home office. Her laptop told the story she'd tried to hide. Dozens of draft documents labeled property transfer, final, and deed template, editable filled her desktop. Her browser history included alarming search terms: how to file deed transfer on abandoned house, notary forgery consequences, and claiming property while owner is incapacitated. Then came the final nail. A floor plan of his house, with rooms labeled by name and notes like replace sofa, guest room equals office, and paint master bedroom blue. She planned to live here, Jennifer said, staring at the screen in disbelief. This wasn't about a technicality. She was planning to redecorate before you were even home. Within days, Karen was served with a court summons. Her confident facade didn't crack. At least, not yet. She continued to parade around Willow Creek Estates as if nothing had happened, waving to neighbors, watering her flowers, attending HOA meetings. But the whispers started. People began asking questions. Tom said she'd stopped making eye contact at the mailbox. And then came the day of the hearing. Karen walked into the courtroom like she owned the place, immaculately dressed in a tailored navy suit, her blonde hair styled to perfection, expensive handbag swinging confidently at her side. She didn't look nervous. If anything, she looked smug, like she still believed this was all just a misunderstanding that could be cleared up with a few well-placed words. But the judge wasn't buying it. An older woman with a commanding presence and no patience for games, she reviewed the case file with increasing irritation. When Karen's attorney attempted to downplay the situation as a mix-up, perhaps a miscommunication during a stressful time, the judge held up a hand. "Counsel," she said sternly, "the evidence shows your client orchestrated a fraudulent deed transfer while the rightful homeowner was unconscious in a hospital bed. That's not a misunderstanding. That's deliberate, calculated fraud." Karen's jaw tightened. Her attorney looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Still, she held firm, until it was her turn on the stand. Karen took the stand with her chin high and her expression carefully composed. For a moment, it seemed she might bluff her way through. She began with the same line she'd rehearsed all week, that he had agreed to sell her the house before his hospitalization, and that she had only expedited the process after he became unreachable. "We had a verbal agreement," she said firmly. "He told me he was thinking of moving and would consider an offer. I just followed through." Jennifer approached the witness stand calmly, a stack of documents in hand. "Let's clarify this agreement," she said. "When exactly did this conversation happen?" Karen blinked. "A few days before his surgery." Jennifer nodded. "And you believe he gave you verbal permission to transfer the deed while he was hospitalized?" "He didn't say not to." "But he was unconscious, wasn't he?" Karen shifted in her seat. "He hadn't finalized anything yet. I just assumed." "So, to be clear," Jennifer pressed, "you created a legal document transferring ownership of a house based on a conversation that happened before he was incapacitated, without a written contract, and with no witnesses?" Karen's eyes darted toward her attorney, who stared straight ahead, frozen. Jennifer flipped to the medical file. "This is a timestamp from the hospital. ICU admission, 3:42 a.m. This is the date and time the deed was signed and notarized, 2 days later. You expect the court to believe that a man undergoing emergency surgery and sedated with antibiotics signed a legal document during that time?" Karen's jaw clenched. "He was going to sign it." "But he didn't," Jennifer said sharply. "You forged it. You lied to the notary. You filed it with the county clerk's office as if it were legitimate. And you planned to move in the moment he died, or so you hoped." That was when the cracks began to show. Karen's perfectly rehearsed mask slipped. Her voice rose in pitch, her answers became defensive. Then came the outburst. "He didn't deserve that house," she suddenly snapped, standing halfway out of her seat. "He moved in here and immediately started pushing boundaries. That ridiculous garden, his mailbox, it was all against the rules. Someone had to stop him." The judge pounded her gavel. "Sit down, Mrs. Winters." Karen obeyed, but the damage was done. The courtroom went silent. Her rant had been spontaneous, emotional, and completely damning. Her own words revealed motive, bias, and malice. Even her attorney couldn't salvage it. He didn't even attempt redirect. The judge looked directly at her with a gaze that could cut glass. "Mrs. Winters, this court finds that you knowingly and willfully committed multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and attempted theft of real property. These are serious criminal offenses under state law." Karen's mouth opened slightly, as if she still believed her title, HOA president, community volunteer, respectable neighbor, might protect her. But the courtroom wasn't Willow Creek. This judge didn't answer to garden committees. "Bailiff," the judge said quietly, "take the defendant into custody." Karen's expression barely changed as the bailiff approached, but the twitch in her jaw betrayed her. She looked from the judge to the courtroom gallery, perhaps searching for someone, anyone, to speak up in her defense. But no one did. Not the neighbors she once bossed around. Not the board members she'd dominated for years. Not even her own lawyer, who quietly gathered his papers without looking up. You can't be serious, she said finally, her voice cracking. I'm the president of the Homeowners Association. I volunteer at the community center. I run the food drive. The judge remained unmoved. You forged documents to steal a home from a man who was unconscious in intensive care. You will be held without bail pending formal sentencing. As the bailiff cuffed her and led her toward the side door, Karen turned back one last time, face drained of color. This will ruin my reputation, she said, almost in disbelief. My position in the community. You should have thought of that before committing felony fraud, the judge replied, already focused on the next case. The silence that followed felt deafening. He remained seated, stunned, as the reality sank in. His house, his sanctuary, was safe. The nightmare was over. Jennifer leaned in and gave his arm a squeeze. She's done, she said. And she'll be in court again, on the criminal side next. The criminal proceedings moved swiftly. Between the forged deed, handwriting analysis, notary testimony, and Karen's own explosive courtroom outburst, the district attorney had more than enough to file multiple felony charges. Forgery, fraud, attempted theft, breaking and entering, even obstruction, after evidence showed she tried to delete emails from her laptop once the investigation began. During sentencing, the judge didn't hold back. Mrs. Winters, she said, you weaponized your authority in the community to manipulate legal systems for your own gain. You acted with arrogance, cruelty, and premeditation. And you showed no remorse until you were caught. The sentence was harsh but fair, 7 years in state prison, $50,000 in fines, and full restitution for all legal costs. Karen Winters didn't say a word as the guards escorted her out of the courtroom in shackles. Back in Willow Creek, everything changed. At the next HOA meeting, the board removed her name from all records and voted unanimously to revise bylaws and limit presidential authority. A new president was elected, Tom, the neighbor who'd warned him from the start. He accepted the position reluctantly, joking that he hoped never to need courtroom footage to do his job. As for him, he finally returned to work, slowly regaining strength and stability. The garden flourished behind its wooden fence. Tomatoes ripened in the sun. Lavender bloomed near the walkway. He even added a bench beneath the sycamore, a quiet spot to sit and breathe freely again. Sometimes neighbors would stop by to chat. And once or twice, someone asked what it had been like, standing up to someone like Karen. How he'd found the strength. He always gave the same answer, I didn't choose to fight. I was just trying to survive. But when someone comes for your home, your name, your dignity, you don't back down. You push back. And he had. Against all odds, he had reclaimed what was his. What would you have done if someone forged your signature and tried to steal your home? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, check out our next video, another real-life HOA nightmare you won't believe.